Back there is EPSOM Racecourse. It's not exactly the place you'd expect to find a ghost, but there is one. A report of a lady haunting the staircase. So, we'll find out exactly who she is. We'll talk to a witness who's seen her recently. We'll talk to a local historian to find out if there's any historical fact. And we'll bring in our very own clairvoyant to see what he can find. All that coming up in this story.
It suddenly got very cold in the office, and I thought, I'm not really sure, somebody's left the back door open. I thought, the painters have been in today, they've left the back door open. And I got up and walked towards the door and saw this lady, didn't seem to have a face, facing me in a long kind of outfit, a long black dress. And I really couldn't believe what I'd seen, and then she disappeared. And I'll be completely honest with you, I virtually ran out the building. And then the next day, the security man said to me, "Oh, you left in a hurry last night." And I said, yeah. And he said, "Was there anything wrong?" And I said, "Well, I know you're going to think I'm completely stupid, but I think I saw a ghost." He said, "Oh, was it a woman?" And I said, "Yes, it was." He said, "Oh, you mean Amy?" Well, when I first saw her, I was, you know, they say your heart goes into your mouth. Well, it does. And I felt almost as though I couldn't move. I felt like I was, you know, my feet weighed a ton and I couldn't move. And I felt absolutely exhausted. It's the only way I can describe it. And I don't know. I mean, I've never seen a ghost before, but that's how I felt, just exhausted. She's most commonly seen on this staircase, either walking down or walking up, but floating rather than walking. When I first saw her, we tried to find out a little bit more about her, obviously, and we don't know that her name is Amy. And apparently this building was used during the First World War as a hospital. There is a story that she may have been worked here as a nurse.
Marilyn is convinced by what she's seen and felt. But is there any historical evidence to support the idea that Amy could have been a nurse?
The hospital building is what they call the Great War Building. And they'd intended to have it up and functional for the Derby of 1914, which took place in the ordinary way. That same autumn, the building, which had been constructed in the spring as an administrative block, had to be converted for the soldiers coming in from the front in France and Flanders. There would have been about 50 patients and perhaps half as many staff in the building, accommodated in the administrative block at the top floor. And they were coming in when the war broke out, when the front was still fluid, and before there were hospitals built over on the continent to accommodate the seriously wounded. Amy the ghost is certainly a very real character, and it's irresistible to try to tie her into somebody historical who would have lived in the area. There wouldn't have been many occasions in which there were female staff in the early part of the century up at the grandstand, and perhaps the only time when it's likely to have happened physically in that building would have been in the period from 1914 to 1916 when there was hospital use.
Marilyn knew nothing about the history of the building before she had her sighting, nor indeed does our next guest, Alan Law. Alan is one of the country's top clairvoyants, so we brought him in to take a look around to see what he can pick up. Alan, you picked up something almost the minute you walked in the building.
Yes.
In fact, before that, it has to be said.
I was actually thinking about it. Last night I'd been rung and I agreed to come. And I linked in quite early this morning when I was getting ready to get up. And I was conscious of a young lady. I would have put her in her mid-20s. She was average height, about 5'3", quite slim, quite an attractive looking young lady. And I received the name Florence Cook with her. And I questioned, and I was told, yes, this is the lady from here. It's not that she's a poltergeist or she's trapped here. She comes of her own volition. And according to what she was saying, she's mainly seen either when there's a race meeting on, and the energies, this huge energy which she draws from people, or immediately after, just after they've had a race meeting here. She dates back, looking at the clothes she appeared to me in, I would put her at just pre-First World War. And of course that would tie in. The only thing I know was that at some time somebody threw themselves under the horse, the King's horse, during the race of Derby. And my feeling is that this woman links in with the group that was involved there.
Right.
I don't know if it was the lady herself, but she comes here of her own volition. It's almost as if this was a scene of her triumph, and therefore this is something she's involved and proud with.
First of all, yes, the long dark clothes tie in, and the fact that she was young. Being tied into the suffragette movement, I'm not absolutely sure. But of course, there is the history of Emily Davison, who she didn't actually die here, but she was run down by the King's horse, and she actually died in the old cottage hospital in Epsom.
Amy is a person, but for my money, she's a person in her own right. I don't think it's wise to try to take things like this and to associate them with the memory of people who've lived and died in the area. There have been instances, as I've said, we're very interested in trying to find out about our local ghosts, where all kinds of apparently biographical messages have come through, giving names, dates, parents, children, and when you look at them very carefully, they dissolve, they're false. There is a relationship between the people and the supernatural, which the ghost, if you can talk of the ghost as an actor rather than just something perceived, wants to build up by having a name and a personality pinned to it. But that's a mask, and when you take the mask away, you've got something which is perhaps much stranger than our idea of dead people walking the earth.
There's very little doubt in my mind that Marilyn did see a ghost in this building behind me. The intriguing question is, who is the ghost? Is it one of the nurses who worked here, or maybe one of the suffragettes? Or are they one and the same? Or do we go along with Jeremy's idea that ghosts don't actually have to be ghosts of people who are alive? They take on a presence and a persona all of their own. Maybe that's what's happened here. It's an intriguing story, isn't it?